Hey everyone, James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today, going to be talking about a Western tea vendor production, or at least Western facing. I am going to be talking about the Milk Cream Alcohol from W2T, which is a 2015 production. Cake right here. I bought this a while ago actually, but not too long. In the past year, I bought this tea, and I was just kind of curious to see how W2T storage is doing. This is a relative budget production from them. I believe it costs around $20 when it first came out. Now it's a bit more. I just checked the site. It's $35. Don't remember what I paid for it, so definitely one that's like intended to be a fairly affordable tea. Let's see. It's described as sort of a Monghai character, which is an area that I tend to like. I also tend to like that category when it gets aged a little bit more. So wanted to try this tea, and also wanted to see how the storage is from W2T, just because it's sort of interesting just to see how vendors' storage will impact tea once it gets like a sufficient amount of age. So right when I was sort of getting into Pu'erh, like 7-8 years ago, W2T was still relatively new, so it was hard to tell exactly how their storage was going. They also moved around a bit. They started out in Beijing, and then they eventually moved south to places with more humid storage. I forget if they're in, I think they're in Guangdong now, as far as their storage goes, and they also, so which is a fairly known to be fairly hot and humid, so curious to see how that has moved along. One thing I will also do is I will measure the relative humidity generated by the cakes when I get them. So I basically take that cake, put it into Mylar with a hygrometer, leave it for a few days, see what's generated. It's not the perfect way to do stuff, but I find that it's better than just going in blind, and it can kind of give you an idea of just how humidified or not a cake is. So this tea generated 59 relative humidity when I received it. So that's definitely on the high end, and definitely sort of what you would want. Usually you want your teas to be generating in the 60s as far as relative humidity. That's what I'm shooting for. So just about got that. Over the course of shipping, it's certainly possible that it could lose some of that, especially if it has a sort of a longer shipping process. But I found that other vendors like Yunnan Sourcing or like more Western ones like Far Winhua, they definitely generate a fair amount less relative humidity than that. Oftentimes in the 40s. I've even had a lot of packages from Taiwan come in at the mid 50s, low 50s. So generating 59 indicates that it probably has a pretty decent humidity in just sort of its natural storage conditions. Okay, so like the other teas, I've already had the first couple steeps. And here's steep number 3. Really aromatic, very floral nose to this. Definitely going to expect this to be relatively green in its profile. You can also boil this too for another steep. Cheers. So definitely a very clean production. Definitely still some bitterness. It kind of has that Monghai floral thing going on. In that sense, it does remind me a bit of, I don't know, probably close to 7532 Spring of Monghai that I had recently. Storage definitely on the clean end. Would not call this remotely close to wet storage, but it has aged a bit, so that is nice. I don't remember if I tried this tea when it was really young. Let's see how that aftertaste is while I make steep number 4. Using 5 grams, 75 milliliters here. Compression on this is not too strong. I think this was before W2T started pressing their cakes a little bit heavier. So that might have an impact. Just might help it to age a little bit quicker if it's a little looser compressed. Little sugar cane, maybe brown sugar, and florals, mostly in the nose. Relatively nice, pretty aromatic overall. In that sense, too, you would expect teas that are too dried out to be a little more insipid in both taste and aroma. Interestingly, I have actually had the opportunity to try a couple of W2T teas recently through a friend. So I recently had Pu'erh, which from 2017, which I think is a slightly different blend than the ones I'd had before. Not a fan of that tea. It's just very. I struggled to see the appeal in it, and the Untitled O2, which is a very impressive tea and just sort of its sheer power of contents. Not something I would drink very often, but it is impressive in a lot of ways. So interesting to come back and now try a much lower end tea compared to those two. Cheers. But to be honest, I think I prefer this right now over the Untitled. Or not the Untitled, Pu'erh. So very stout. I'd say this tea is very, in some ways, after coming from these factory teas and coming to this, it feels like it was made with fewer ingredients, which is certainly true. Those factory blends have a lot more just blended material into it. But it feels similar but different in that sense. It's somewhat resinous, but the resinous nature is a little bit odd compared to those. You can sort of taste like a mineral-y nature to it as well. And I'd say the body is probably better than those factory teas. So, for me, I guess I grade it at somewhat similar quality. Probably a tea that I would still want to hold on to for at least another 7 or 8 years before I start drinking. But now it's starting to get this sort of nice grapiness to it too. So kind of moving into slightly sweeter tones. And yeah, it's just solid, sturdy, robust, relatively simple, but it has all the right structure for a tea. The aftertaste is coming in now and is sort of like salivating my mouth. So just a solid tea all around. I will give this tea a 5.8 rating. I think it could definitely benefit from a few more years. And to be honest, I don't know what I would end up preferring in the long run as far as this tea versus more of a big factory production from like Munghai Tea Factory in the end. They're both interesting. They have similarities, but they're also pretty different from one another. So, time will tell. I think the track record of Munghai Tea Factory is, in general, gives you a better idea of what to expect, whereas this, it might be a little bit more unknown. But so far, I don't see anything wrong with the tea, and it seems to be aging just fine. So, I'd say this gets mildly positive remarks in that sense. Probably a little bit above what I would expect, but approximately in line with that. Okay, well, hopefully you all enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you tried anything that's been more aged by W2T and what you think of their storage. For me, I give it positive remarks too. It seems like it's aging the tea in a relatively clean environment. And is providing it some actual time to some actual maturation, and certainly isn't remotely wet. Okay, well, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.